on, everybody? Welcome back. It's the first Saturday of the new year. That means it's the first Cars and Coffee of 2020. So we're heading to go pick the Lotus up. We're going to take it and the AMG to Cars and Coffee on this cold January morning. But it's supposed to be nice weather later on in the day, probably around 60. And so we're actually going to take the Lotus over to the new shop to do some much needed exhaust work. Earlier in the year when we put on the catless header, everything didn't line up quite right and there was a small exhaust leak, and it was good enough, but it's a little embarrassing every time I start the car. But I'll show you in a second. It rattles the rear bulkhead, the rear panel, and the exhaust leak just doesn't sound good. And that's sad because the exhaust sounds really great at speed. I'd love to share that with y'all. So we're going to pull the rear clam and see if we can mock that exhaust up just a little bit better. Looks like Brandon already beat us here. First we got our buddy Eric, his AMG GTS. Such a cool car. The interior is real similar to the 45, but this is rear-wheel drive and has about 100 more horsepower, so it's so much fun. It's beautiful. Ugh.
Love the AMG sledgehammer now.
And then of course we have the factory 5 truck. It's a little dusty right now. Yeah, there's no windows. This doesn't need to be driven in the winter. The Lotus. This is where it lives. If you're new here, this is actually our old shop, and our buddy Eric owns this. He has a lot of cool cars. We actually built him the factory 5 truck, and he has been kind enough to let me keep the Lotus in here because we don't really have room at the new shop. Brandon needs to put the battery, reconnect the battery. There we go. After I have 300 milligrams of caffeine, I'll be able to talk.
Same.
Look how pretty our engine is. That's about this time last year, all of this was taken apart so we could run all these vibrant lines, paint the manifold, the valve cover. Okay, I'm gonna show you what I was just talking about with the exhaust. You can see it doesn't fit quite right. This one is about an inch too high. This one's an inch to the right too much. So it's gonna rattle this whole panel. If Brandon ever finds the remote. It's in there. It should be in the roof too. All right, excuse me. I'll find it.
Changes every time we get in.
All right, so the startup procedure for the Elise is weird. You have to have this little Star Trek key fob, okay? And this big one will lock and unlock, and it will also disarm the immobilizer, which we're actually gonna get rid of at one point. So I guess it's not a weird procedure, but you have to have that remote unless you've disabled the immobilizer. So yeah, so you can hear that rear panel rattling inside the car. It's really annoying and kind of embarrassing. So I think we're gonna cut those exhaust tips off, grind them down at a little bit of an angle, and try to weld them back on. That might work. If that doesn't work, we will try to bend the pipe a little bit, but it's really short pipe and it's stainless steel, so I'm not sure how successful that would be. But we're gonna try to make it work. This is actually my second Lotus Elise, and it is my favorite car in the entire world. It's so much fun to drive. It's so beautiful, even almost 15 years later. I've done quite a bit to the interior. I don't know if we're gonna do this while we're driving or if you can even hear me, but we've carpeted all of the exposed aluminum, gives it a little more finished feel. I'm just not a big fan of the exposed aluminum in the entire car. We have the Grp Gated Shifter. This thing is gorgeous. It works really well. I actually did a little install video on that. We have our digital dash from a one-man company in, I guess he's in the UK, honestly, I'm not too sure. And I can't pronounce the name of it. He's told me directly how to say it and I can't say it. This is an awesome digital dash. It works really well. We also have a lot of carbon fiber goodies. We have these carbon fiber side skirts and center console. Both of those are from GRP as well. The door pulls. The next little thing we're gonna do after today, we're going to get a different steering wheel. I hate the steering wheel. It's plastic, it's all falling apart and kind of rough. The style of it's fine. I just really don't like the airbag cover. So we're gonna do that next. So this happens to be the first time that I've got to watch the AMG driving, and man, I really like that roof box on top of the car. I was gonna take it down once winter is over, but now I'm having second thoughts. It just looks so cool up there. Okay, we're really late. We were supposed to be here at 8. It's now 9:30, so I'm not sure if there's going to be a lot of people here or not. Okay, so Cars and Coffee was fun, but now to the main event. I'll show you what I was talking about. So our exhaust tip on the left, we can see it needs to come over about 1/2 inch to the left. The one on the right, it's way too high. It needs to come down about the same amount of room. Now, these didn't fit perfectly when I first got the car, but they fit even worse after we put the catless header on. And we're not exactly sure what we're gonna do yet, but first we're gonna get the diffuser pulled off and we're gonna take a look in here and see what we can do to make that a little bit better. Okay, now we got that rear panel off. We can see a little bit better. So, like I said, this tip on the left needs to come over and maybe even up just a little bit, about 1/4 inch to the left. So we have this pretty severe bend right here. So if we were to notch it on this side, we should be able to move this up and over just a little bit. So we got the muffler pulled off and one of the hangers is actually broken, so Brandon is about to weld that hanger back on. What we decided to do, instead of chopping and welding everything, we're going to space this hanger down about 1/2 inch, and we've taken a 1/4 inch off of this collector pipe. We're going to take another 1/4 inch off, and hopefully that'll move this left exhaust tip over just enough. If we were to cut the actual tip and bend it and weld it, it's gonna come out cockeyed and not straight at all. One thing we're doing while this is all taken apart, this is that rear panel where your exhaust comes out of. Now this is the Euro panel. If you have a US spec car or the original panel, it's solid here because your exhaust comes down through here. Well, these points attach to the diffuser. These points here come through the trunk area. And normally they have these clips, which usually aren't that big of a problem, but there's no way to get your hand up there to adjust the clips on the left or right side. You can usually get it to the center, but to make things much easier on us, we went ahead and threw some riv nuts on there. Should have been that way from the factory. Okay, so that's all back together. It looks really good. It's not perfect, but if it was perfect, they wouldn't call it a Lotus. So we ended up spacing that side out just to get it off that rear panel, which it is. This side, we ended up trimming a little bit of the exhaust so that we could slide the entire muffler over to the left. So it's also now not touching. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it looks like that muffler had been welded a few different times. The tips have been welded, and so it just wasn't going to line up perfectly. We weren't going to chop up a whole bunch of stainless and re-weld all of it. We just wanted it off that back panel so it wouldn't rattle when we started the car. So we're going to turn it over and see what it sounds like. Okay, it doesn't sound like anything's rattling, so I would say that's a success. So in that case, I think in the next video on the Lotus, we'll do a sound test or some sound samples of the larini muffler with the Weapon R header. As always, I really appreciate you watching what we're doing out here, and we'll see you next time.